Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a review, and actually this is a long time coming. This is a fragrance that I've had for about 4 years, and it's from the House of Gucci, which I've now reviewed a couple Guccis on the channel, and more to come. More to come, definitely, because I still want to review Gucci Pour Homme Deux, or 2. But today we're going to talk about one of my favorite from the Alchemist line, which is their high-end niche line that is almost $400 a bottle retail, which is crazy. But this is Gucci's A Midnight Stroll. Now, I will make a little bit of a beef, okay? Because for their high-end niche line, sometimes when I spray it, there'll be a little bit of like a piece of like a trickle of fragrance runs down the side, and you can almost see right there some buildup from where that fragrance has just run down after I've sprayed it. The sprayer is fantastic, but I think some of it just maybe either leaks out of the side or here. I'm not 100% sure, but everything should be flawless when you're spending this type of money on a perfume. Needless to say, I am one of the few people who's a sucker for kind of the painted bottle. It reminds me of like old Indian style art where they're painting, you know, the vases and stuff like that. And basically what ended up happening is a friend sent me a decant of A Midnight Stroll. And so I figured anytime that something like this comes in, it's a sign that I should review this. And I did spray this and tried it, and it is exactly like mine. But I just wanted to make sure everything was exactly the same. And so this is kind of a kick in the butt to do a review on A Midnight Stroll. Now, I want to read you the very small blurb. I don't even know if you can call it a blurb, but here's what Gucci says about A Midnight Stroll. An incense-scented fragrance celebrating the allure of the night. That's it. I mean, one sentence. Other than that, they start talking about the line itself, the perfumery line, the Alchemist garden line, blah, 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 all this stuff, okay? And so I think on the Gucci website right now, 100 mils is $384. So again, very on the price. But I will say it is probably one of my favorite incense fragrances. Like I would put it in a top 10 incense fragrance list that I did, easy, okay? And I did it. This is not a top 10 incense if you want to kind of check it out. And one of the things that I think is tough for people to swallow is that you're paying $384 retail for just basically an incense fragrance, right? And while I think it can easily be described as that, there's more going on if you peek beneath the surface, okay? So I think the problem with Gucci is what they tried to do is they tried to create this line where everything could be layered, okay? So with other fragrances from this Alchemist Garden line, personally, I was never a fan of that type of marketing. I'm sure it sells to the ultra rich. Like here, buy all 12 from the line, if you will. They're almost $400 each, but who cares? Buy one of each. Buy 2 of each. Give one to your wife. They're completely unisex. You know, that kind of marketing is, I don't know, it puts me off a little bit. Blend them together. Try this one day and this and that. I'm never into blending. Even on fragrances where they say it's supposed to be blended, it's not really my thing, you know? So we're just going to focus on this and this alone, but just know that even though it isn't for me, technically, this Alchemist Garden line is meant to take one and, you know, blend the oud with this one, the rose with this one, and see what you can come up with. And that's just not really my thing. So we're just going to focus on A Midnight Stroll, which definitely is my thing because this is their incense. This is their frankincense fragrance. Now, what makes this fragrance unique to me compared to the average incense fragrance is that Alberto Morillas basically used multiple quote-unquote smoky elements. So obviously there is the traditional frankincense in here, and it does smell very, very high quality. I have about an hour and a half dry down, give or take, and then I've got about a 10-hour dry down here. And I've had this bottle since 2020 when it first came out, and so I have a lot of experience with this fragrance. But basically what they've done is they've used multiple smoky elements, the frankincense and what they call cade juniper wood, which is basically this tar-like element that kind of reminds me in feeling of the viscosity of motor oil. You know how motor oil will kind of burn at different weathers, either it's hot or cold or hot, I should say. The motor oil will tell you it burns at a certain temperature. 10 W30, 10 is when it's cold, 30 is when it's hot kind of thing, right? How the oil acts in the heat versus how it acts in the cold. This fragrance kind of feels like you get to see the whole progression, you know, of the viscosity of the fragrance go from cold to hot. And I like that. I like the feeling that you're kind of getting the wood, but you're also getting the burnt wood. You're getting what becomes after it's burned. You're getting the ashes, you know, you're getting the smoke, you're getting the resins, all of this stuff, you know. You kind of see the before and the after picture with this. And it places you outside brilliantly, which we'll talk about as well. So the way that Cade juniper wood smells in a fragrance, it smells like you kind of get the dry, woody, foresty notes. But you can just imagine as the wood is kind of put into the flame, if you will. And it's like watching the wood go from this dry wood that was cut down and just literally being turned to ash into this furnace. You know, that's the image of Cade juniper wood, the wood literally being burnt. The opening feels like you're kind of watching that happen over and over again, you know? You get pieces of the dry wood, you get resins, you get burnt resins, you get sort of that ember, you know? Imagine like someone putting an ember on a hookah where you smoke. It kind of gives you that feeling, but it's like you're watching it on repeat over and over again. Like, you know, the days of your life kind of just going on and on and on. Then the day turns into night, the night turns into day. There's this feeling of kind of watching something on repeat. And I will say, though, that combination of the two does make the incense here feel slightly unique. You know, I think there have been a couple other fragrances that have used this Cade oil, juniper oil, Cade juniper wood recently that I've talked about and reviewed, but this one does it very, very well. And I will tell you, it really does feel like you're kind of watching the story of a man putting the wood on the fire. You get the wood, you also get the flying embers, the old wood being turned to ash, and then you kind of see the gummy resins, the ash falling on the resins, maybe even trying to put the resin out, and the fire going from that dark blue to red to the burgundy soft, you know, flame, and kind of creating this natural, slightly ambery, viscous type feel in the base. But I don't want you to think like a glowing red amber hue. It's not like you're getting a pure amber accord. It's more just like the feeling, you know, the texture of the amber is here, but it doesn't smell like you're smelling an amber. This is not an amber. This is an incense-based fragrance through and through, okay? So it's all about the ashes, the resins, the gummy resins in here, the smoke rising to the heavens, all that good stuff. That's what A Midnight Stroll is all about. Now, there is a very small change in how it opens and how it dries down. But for the most part, I have to say that A Midnight Stroll is a very, very linear fragrance. It's a fragrance that if you like how it starts in the beginning, odds are you're really going to like how it finishes, okay? Now, my guess is part of that linear tilt is due to the fact that the formulas have to be simple. So they only give you 3 notes. Excuse me. Trying not to take a cough drop because I didn't want it to affect how I was smelling the fragrance, but I think I'm going to take one so I don't cough in your ear here. Ricola. Okay. So my guess is that one of the reasons why they made it 3 ingredients that they showed you is that they had to keep these formulas somewhat simple, because if they did this big drawn out composition where there were 12 notes in the base and 8 in the heart and 4 up top, it would clash with everything else in the line. They wanted you to be able to mix and match. So what they did is they purposely kept the formulas simple, okay? That's one of the reasons for the linear feel of a lot of these fragrances. It's almost like you're just getting one piece of a formula. Although, to be fair, I like this piece of the formula because I am an incense lover. I love incense through and through. I love it in all of the different kind of forms. Any kind of smoke, incense you can give to me, I usually love it. But I do think they didn't want it to clash. You know, if you sprayed on A Midnight Stroll and then you went to go put on the new Heart of Leo, which I would love to smell one day, or Voice of the Snake or whatever, you know, they want them to be able to go together. And so if they had these long drawn out formulas, it wouldn't work. So I do think that's one of the reasons why you get a lot of linearity, if that's a word, with these fragrances. So I really think this type of perfume is kind of made for this type of creation is perfect for an incense fragrance where everything is kept simple. You know, it's almost like the story of the creation behind one of my favorite incense fragrances of all time, which is Armani's Bois d'Encens. This is sadly discontinued according to Parfumo, which I have to say, if that's true, that makes me very, very sad, because I really feel like this is like a reference incense-based fragrance. The story went that Giorgio Armani wanted Michel Almerac to create a reference incense that really reminded him of being a boy sitting in Catholic church, right? So Michel Almerac started with this very basic, simple formula and showed it to Giorgio Armani, and Giorgio Armani said, "That's it. That's exactly what I want." He said, "No, you don't understand. This is just supposed to be like the skeleton. This is the first iteration. We're going to add all this stuff on there." Giorgio Armani goes, "No, excuse me. I don't want you to add anything else on top of it. I want it to be kept simple." And Michel Almerac kept trying to say, "What if we did this? What if we did that?" And Giorgio Armani refused over and over again. He said, "No, I just want to capture that church incense, and you've done it in Bois d'Encens, and put it out." And that's what they did. And it kind of became a reference incense. The problem is that many of these very realistic, photorealistic incense fragrances, they don't last, you know. So for Bois d'Encens, I get about an hour or two. That's it. You know, I'm ready to reapply after an hour or two. One thing I will say about A Midnight Stroll, this thing lasts like 12 hours. No joke. It does smell realistic in one sense. In another sense, I think there's something in here that's really pushing it, you know, giving it that oomph. And I don't know what that something is. I think there's some modern aroma chemical in here that probably Alberto Morillas is like the only perfumer they allow to use or something. But it really does feel like there's something in here that's very modern. I would guess Cashmeran, if you really twisted my arm. I don't know if there's something else like that in here pushing. But there's definitely, this is not just traditional natural smelling incense. There's a little bit more here somehow. Okay. But one thing I will say, Bois d'Encens, you know, when I smell this, this reminds me of smelling incense indoors. Okay. Excuse me. Specifically kind of inside of like a church. Maybe even smelling like last night's incense that was burned in the night before, and the week before, and the year before. You know, like you're just smelling the incense built up in this church over the years, where it's like embedded in the seat you're sitting in, or the pews as they call them. If you don't like incense, maybe that's why they call them pew, because PU, you won't like the smell of it because they have just incense resonating into them. Maybe like in the walls, just incense has just, you know, filled this church time and time again, right? Bois d'Encens feels very indoorsy. Whereas Gucci's A Midnight Stroll, you know, you can stick with the religious tilt. There definitely is something religious to the incense. I mean, incense in general reminds me of religion. There's no getting away from it. I was raised Catholic. I'll never break that association, period. But maybe this time you take the priest out of the church and you put him in the gardens of the church, let's say. And so A Midnight Stroll, you're walking with your priest buddy or whoever it is on a stroll, and you know, maybe his robes and his stole that he's wearing, maybe they still carry the smell of incense from masses that he previously did that night. Now it's in the middle of the night, but you can still smell the incense from the masses that he performed, but you're also getting the outdoor smells. You're getting the green smells of the trees. You're getting the leaves, the plants, the garden smell. Specifically, Gucci lists cypress, which I've often said has this very medicinal cleansing aspect to it. Imagine if you're breathing in like the coldest, crispest air you can imagine. But this fragrance doesn't feel very cold to me. It actually feels warm. Like there's a lot of resins underneath the incense that's being burned, still alive, you know? Like the ashes that are falling are threatening to put those embers out, and yet the ember still kind of burns underneath. And seeing the cypress tree dot the sort of landscape, it just feels like the cypress trees work as like a vacuum, you know? Like they're just sucking up all the dirty molecules in the air. And yet there is this stillness to this fragrance, to the air. There's a calm overtone, a very calm, relaxing fragrance. These type of fragrances always give me that feel, very meditative in nature. And it's almost like, you know, this is one of those nights you will remember for very important events that are happening. There's an old saying, I think it's attributed to Lenin. He says, there are some decades where nothing happens at all. There are some weeks where decades happen. And there's just something about this fragrance that, to me, makes me feel like I'm at the center of something very crucial. You know, something very important was playing around all around me. It's almost like on a night while wearing a midnight stroll, you allow the priest, who you don't really believe what he's saying, to kind of convert you, or let him at least think he's converted you. You know, even if you aren't a believer, you're playing the game tonight. You're allowing yourself to kind of be swept up in the times. And because of this, you just feel connected to the person, the time, space you live in, nature, the trees around you, the garden. You notice maybe the flowers in the garden, and you're taking a stroll, and you're just with nature. You're with the person you're with. You're connected because of this beautiful night you're sharing together, and of course, nature. And the brief is very strange, because the brief says that for a midnight stroll, it's an ode to the allure of the night, which I guess, depending on how you wanted to read that, you know, you could read that as a very carnal saying, very carnal fashion brief, or you can kind of see it as the scene I described, being one with people, one with nature, one with the night, okay? The stars in the sky, all that good stuff. All right, water time, or I'm not going to be able to finish this video. So, if I didn't have to talk every day, all day at work, it wouldn't be so bad. My voice would have a chance to heal, but it gets no chances. So, I choose to describe it this way because these are the feelings that a fragrance like Midnight Stroll really brings out in me. I mean, technically, it is a very simple incense-based fragrance with woods and cypress, okay? That's pretty much it. I mean, technically, the only notes that are listed are cade, juniper wood, cypress, and frankincense. That's it. Those three, okay? That's all they basically give you. And so the reason I choose to describe it the way I do, being connected to the night and people, and, you know, the priest comes out and takes this stroll with you, is because these are the feelings that the fragrance really brings out in me. Technically, it's very simple. I mean, it's burning embers, dry, desiccated woods, but also contrast that with the warm resins, you know, imagine the embers being threatened to go out, but they just kind of have that little engine that could mentality, and they just stay lit no matter what's the ash that's falling on them. They just feel to be kind of smoldering, and yet they still feel strong and burning the incense for you. Rising smokestacks, kind of ashes accumulated. If you want to take the ash metaphor further, you can imagine Ash Wednesday, where they take the ashes and put it on your forehead, say ashes to ashes, you know, dust to dust. You're reminded of kind of where you come from, where you're going to go into the future. It's a very contemplative. Incense fragrances always make me feel very contemplative. And you just imagine, you know, priests walking up and down the aisle with the thurible, which there's a great trivia question if you ever have one. What's that thing that the priest throws the incense off with? It's called a thurible. And just imagine the priest kind of burning incense, watching the smoke rise to the heavens, and just kind of imagining that your prayers are kind of rising with the plumes of smoke up to the heavens. It basically takes you back to the start. Basically takes you back to the meaning of perfume, which comes from the Latin per fumus, which basically means to smoke, or maybe more correctly, you could say the definition would be through smoke. So through smoke, we can see our dreams and aspirations and hopes kind of carried to the heavens, right? Or whatever God you pray to. So hoping your prayers get answered, as all of us do. And you can kind of see ancient man burning these type of incense type resins, you know, frankincenses and myrrhs and stuff like that, thousands of years ago, and just hoping that increases the chances of his or her prayers being answered by God Almighty. So for me, this fragrance seems to just kind of capture this special night, this like moment. You know, A Midnight Stroll is a great name for the fragrance, actually. I have no clue what the hell the leopard stands for. Maybe you're rich enough where there's a leopard strolling around in your garden, like a tame leopard. Shit, I don't know. Leopards are beautiful creatures, but this fragrance, for some reason, it's like a flashbulb. You know, when I wear this, it's like that day that I wear it, that day or night, it's seared into my memory. And there's a theory out there called the amygdala theory. It's also known as the emotional arousal theory, which that just sounds dirty, so we're going to stick with amygdala theory. But it basically posits that when experiencing a stressful event, the amygdala in your brain becomes highly activated, leading to enhanced memory. So you basically remember more stressful events more strongly. Now, stressful could also be something like the beautiful birth of your child or something like that, graduation or whatever it is. It could also be something horrible like a marriage. I kid. But for some reason, this fragrance works as this like flashbulb for me. I remember every single time I've worn this fragrance. Every single time I've worn it, I remember exactly what I was doing. The last time I wore this, I remember wearing my Raiders uniform. It was on a Sunday, and we probably lost that day. But I remember getting ready to go see my buddy and just, you know, spend some time together, enjoy the time, watch the game. That was the last time I wore this. Every single time I've worn it, it's just like a flashbulb. I guess it just has to do with the nature of incense fragrances, because they really almost make you calm down, take a breath, and pay attention to your surroundings. So, you know, I kind of have to describe it in something different than just incense and smoke, because, I mean, you know, even though it is just that, it's not just that. There's more to it than that as well. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there are other notes at play. Sorry to do that in your ear, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are other notes that kind of play a supporting role here that aren't listed. I mentioned my guess that there's something very sort of labdanum-y, sticky, resinous that probably is not listed here. For the most part, I think outside of something that makes it smell slightly more modern, maybe like I guessed cashmeran earlier, but I guess it could be some other things that I'm just not picking up on. There's definitely something that makes this, I would say, feel a little bit more modern than other incense standouts like Avignon, like Incense Extreme, which I absolutely love. This is probably my favorite incense fragrance. Like Incense, you know, there's something very modern about this. I use the word modern in like maybe a niche, like a high-end niche. There's something, excuse me, there's something in here that, you know, may make the average person think, okay, it's worth paying $400 for this, because you can get some of these, you know, I think I paid 40 bucks for this or something. I can't remember. Or maybe even someone threw it in for free. I think Galen might have thrown this in for free when I bought a fragrance with him. He was like, here, take this too. So paying $400 for an incense-based fragrance, yeah, you know, you're obviously paying for the name, which Coty is the distributor, by the way. Yeah, Coty. And I just saw this was a tester. Yeah, it's a tester. Maybe that's why it has leaking issues. But, I mean, for a tester, it looks like a full presentation. But speaking of that, I got this bottle heavily discounted. I think I paid $150. I didn't pay $384, whatever they're asking. So look around. You will see deals every now and then. Be patient. You know, if you're looking for this type of perfumery, be patient. And in closing, I mean, I heard someone describe this fragrance as a trance. Like this fragrance like puts you in a trance, puts you in this state of mind. It may have been Eugene even, because I know Eugene talked a lot about meditating and wearing this fragrance and being in that meditative state. It's just a beauty. I mean, if you love smoke like I do, if you love incense, if you like, you know, these big giant plumes of smoke and resins underneath and woods and all that stuff, tarry feelings, this is really beautiful. Very well done. I would love to explore more from this line. I am not familiar with the rest of the fragrances. I would love to smell more, but they're very expensive, as you know. So, but this one I can wholeheartedly recommend. If you are a frankincense lover, if you're a smoke lover like I am, definitely this is one to check out. This is, you know, this is probably some of the better perfumery that Gucci has done in this niche line. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Sorry about sounding like Marge Simpson today with the voice, or maybe it's Patty and Selma. Her sister is probably more apt, but hopefully my voice continues to improve. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching, commenting, liking, subscribing. There is a new Discord server for Channel Ram. I'm going to drop the link. Thanks, Noah, for putting it together. Or if you want to kind of trade, show perfumes, drop your scent of the day, you can. Excuse me. I've never ran a Discord server. I guess it's kind of self-running because the moderators are Noah and Angie. So we've got two great moderators. But if you want to be a part of the Ram Fam Discord server, I'll leave it in the link. And start thinking of amazing things to do for 10,000 subscribers coming up on us very, very quickly. So as always, cheers, guys. I love you. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.